The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey, coming to your cordless, everybody, live up to the satellite and down into your phone. It's Wednesday night, April 7th, 2024. It's 11 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States, 8 p.m. on the West Coast, 11 a.m. in Singapore, 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Sydney, and we're here where I'm sitting in Northeast Minneapolis. It's 10 p.m. Central Daylight Time. I am Jim Peters, and welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. This is episode number 45? Is that right, or is it 6? I can't remember. I keep the time. Yeah, well, I got the Biden problem. That's what I got. It's 145. Let's go with that, okay? It's episode number 145. We'll fix it in post. No, we won't. There's no post. It's live. We are live on the intertubes everywhere. For those of you who are not watching this live, yeah, you can do that. You can watch it live. I've told you this. We really, the vast majority of our viewing and listening is on demand, but still, we do this live partly for a reason. Like, we have a guest tonight. Martin Willis is here. He's the host of the Podcast UFO podcast. It's called Podcast UFO. That's the name of the podcast. So, we're doing this live. We do a live interview. We take phone calls. You can call up. If you have a question for Martin, you can ask him. That's the reason we do this. Yeah, we got it going on, folks. I tell you what, and that makes me an okay boomer, and I am, and it does. That's right. So let me tell you what we got. Yeah, let me show you what we got going on here. So Martin's coming on in a few minutes, and he will be live now. Yeah, it's true. Half of the interviews we do here we pre-tape in the afternoon. And the reason is because it's 11:30 at night on the East Coast, and too many people are going to bed. So we give all our guests the opportunity to pre-tape in the afternoon, but half of them take us up on that. So Martin decided he wanted to do live. That's great. Fantastic. I love it. That's terrific. Tomorrow night, David Strom, the associate editor of HideAir.com is going to be here. And I know he has a few things to talk about, because he is, he's a regular guest on the show. It comes out about every 6 weeks or so. And he's not a man who's conducive to conspiracy theory, as I am, because I become so jaded at this point. More than half the conspiracy theories I've ever thought of that actually end up coming true. So I'm totally jaded, and he's getting jaded too. He has come to the conclusion it's very hard to conclude that what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, with Trump getting shot was not an accident or incompetence or whatever you want to call it. It's kind of really interesting. So basically what he's suggesting, and he's certainly not the only one who suggested this, is not that the Secret Service or the FBI or the CIA or the government or someone in the government actually made a plan to shoot Donald Trump. It's just that they kind of left the door open, so if anybody wanted to, they can take their shot. That's more or less where he's coming from. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I certainly can understand that too. I don't know what's happening. I don't, but that's certainly plausible this point. It's very difficult to imagine these people being that incompetent. I mean, everything went wrong here. Everything. And, it's not like this guy was hiding on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, I mean, he was on a roof out in the middle of nowhere. People saw him with a rifle. I mean, it's ridiculous how many people saw this guy before he actually got off a shot. I mean, it's just, and so You're telling me you didn't see it, you know? Well, were you kind of instructed to look the other way? I don't know. No one's really suggesting that anybody's hired this kid to do this. That's the thing. But if you make it really easy, the theory is sooner or later maybe somebody will literally give it a shot. Literally. Anyway, David's going to talk about that. Now Monday, we really lucked out here because this is going to be an incredible interview. We're going to talk with Jeff Shepard, who's written 3 books on the Watergate affair from the 1970s. He has a documentary coming out tomorrow on August 8th because that's the 50th anniversary of Richard Nixon's resignation. It was 50 years ago tomorrow. And so his documentary is coming out tomorrow. He's going to be on the show on Monday. And he is basically, we'll get the details from him because I've mentioned this on previous broadcasts when I've set this up. I have one huge, enormous question for him that doesn't make sense to me. So he has to answer this. But he is alleging that the entire Watergate affair was a pre-planned operation to get Richard Nixon out of office. That it's not just like they stumbled onto these guys in the Watergate complex, busted into the Democratic National. That it was not he is alleging that it was not an accident. It wasn't an accident that they got caught, although it was like this thing with the Secret Service and Butler. Like kind of was an accident, but kind of like they left the door open for somebody to do it. But so I don't know. That's the thing we got to figure out. But anyway, he's I'm going to watch this over the weekend. I'll put a link up on our blog tonight or tomorrow morning. The website for the documentary is watergatesecret.com. It's not plural. They've been advertising as plural, but the actual URL is Washington Secret, singular.com. And we'll link to that so you can find it. I don't actually know if it's going to be on that website per se. I'm kind of assuming, I'm kind of assuming it's going to be on Amazon Prime somewhere or Netflix. And I'm going to watch it before Monday. Anyway, it's going to be really interesting to talk to this guy. He was a part of the Nixon administration. I think he was a speechwriter, if I'm right. I'm not sure. We'll find out about that. One thing I learned about this, my big question is, well, how can you plan on these guys getting caught if the guys who busted into the Watergate office complex don't get caught, nothing happens. So how could you plan that they get caught? And the guy who caught them, Frank Willis, no one's ever alleged that he had anything to do with it. As a matter of fact, he basically died in poverty. It's really a sad story. He was hailed as a hero, but after this happened, he couldn't find work. And he passed away, I think, at the age of 59 or something like that. The guy was basically broke for the rest of his life. And so in that sense, it's a really, really sad tale for him. But no one's ever alleged that he had anything to do with it at all, other than the fact that he stumbled into these guys. Now, what I didn't know, what I just learned in doing prep for this interview, is that that's actually the second time they busted into the Democratic National Headquarters office. They did it a week earlier, and to put in a bunch of bugs and wiretap the phones, and then they realized that one of the wiretaps on one of the phones failed. So they actually went back a second time, and that's when they got caught. So, is it just one of those things where we're just going to keep going back until somebody catches us? I don't know. We're going to have to ask Shepard this. It'll be really interesting. Now, let me tell you what I got going on after that. Next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're taking off because the following week, Monday the 19th, is the start of the Democratic National Convention. We have big plans here. We're going to do 4 special shows, 4 nights in a row. And right now, my plan is, we're going to send a press release out about this next week. My plan is that we're going to start our shows that week an hour earlier. So we're going to start at 10 p.m. Eastern instead of 11. Partly, I want to see how this plays. We're going to end with our famous convention panel. The shows we've done with it's our month in review panel, basically. And the shows we've done with our month in review panel, they come on normally the last Monday of every month, although that Thursday is the one day before the last Monday of the month, as far as our schedule is concerned. Have been very well watched. People seem to like this, and we had this. It's the same crew that I brought over from Conch News, where we did the Conch News Weekend Show podcast. That was audio only. We did that for 4 or 5 years. Every Saturday. Was it Saturday? I can't even remember now. I think we did it every Saturday. Well, whatever. But yeah, I can't remember. My mind is mush. So yeah, it's basically the same 3 guys and me, and yeah, we have pretty good rapport, and it's pretty the atmosphere is pretty light. So we're gonna end the week with that on Thursday. But the last time we did this, which was at the Republican National Convention, we decided to wait until Trump's speech was done. And we ended up starting that show at 12:30 a.m. Eastern, an hour and a half later than we normally do. And I assume because of that, almost no one watched it. And so this time I kind of want to do the opposite. I want to try starting an hour earlier to see if that increases our viewership even more. So my plan right now is we're gonna start at 10 p.m. Eastern. Kamala Harris is going to give her speech, big effing deal. It's like she has anything to say. But the things I have this in my show notes for tonight, and that is, you can't underestimate these people. There's a very good chance they can win this. It depends on what Trump does, and it depends on. I mean, they're bringing out all the celebrities, all the gloss. Megan the Stallion, she's singing, or is that what you want to call that's what she's doing? I don't know. If you're a low information voter and you're not paying much, no one in America should vote for these people. Nobody. The reason is because they're going to just completely destroy the American economy, and I can't stress this enough. We can talk about their policy positions on abortion, and student loan forgiveness, all that crap. Well, actually, student loan forgiveness actually falls into what I'm talking about here. But the fact of the matter is, if these people have an unfettered lever on the U.S. government, they will destroy the American economy permanently. I'm not exaggerating this. They talk about threat to democracy. No, I'm talking about a threat to the economy. They're not a threat to democracy. We're not a threat to democracy. Trump's not a threat to democracy, but they are a threat to the economy. I can't stress this enough. So anybody who pays bills, who has an income, should not vote for these people. But it's like, if you're not paying attention and you don't know shit, and then that's the problem. Nobody in America knows about economics. Hell, the people in government, the people in Congress don't know about economics. Murray Saber was on last night. God bless him. I mean, he's a fantastic economist. He was saying the same thing. Nobody in Congress actually knows how any of this shit works, and it's unbelievable. And I barely know. After studying this for 20, 30 years, this is the problem. And of course, we got a problem now because no one in America trusts experts. And I talked with Murray about that last night too. No one trusts experts. Why should you? We had the COVID thing. The experts were all wrong. Let me tell you about the COVID thing too. So the COVID started the real, basically the start of the COVID pandemic. You can pin to March 13th, 2020. The reason I remember that is because I was supposed to go to a fundraiser that night for a nonprofit organization, and that's very dear to me. And it got canceled at the last minute. And it got canceled because of COVID. And that was a Saturday. That's basically when all this started, okay? So I started working at Conch News very shortly after that, about 3 or 4 weeks after that. And I was there, and Jeff Meyer made me this editor-in-chief, and I was happy to do that. So we were going to start podcasts. And our first podcast was a video podcast, and was going to be a 15-minute daily news show, basically, where I basically talked into the camera and riffed off the news of the day. It's just 15 minutes, no guests, nothing elaborate, a 15-minute show. So we started doing test shows, I think in late April, if I'm right. Yeah, in late April. And they were posted on YouTube. We didn't do them live, but we posted them all. That was the idea. So because we thought we'd roll right, we're testing out this format. We thought we'd roll right into it, and we did about 6 weeks of those shows before we had a business emergency. And Jeff agreed with me that we had to kill this for a while, and we ended up killing it for what, a year or 9 months. We didn't get back to it until March 2021. And that's when we actually started podcasting at Kong News. So, but the thing is, this is the deal. So I'm keeping track of this, and I'm using two reference sources for data, for information. I'm using the CDC website and the state of Minnesota website. That's what I'm using. And I started keeping track of this. I started checking on this in April. And it was only like 3 weeks. We were in the first week of May, and I realized, well, Jesus, there's nothing going on here. It was already obvious that COVID was a disease of the old and the sick. If you were old, you were going to, COVID was looking for you. And if you were already infirmed in some manner, you had a very likely chance of dying from it. But that was it. That's the only thing I noticed. That's what I noticed, is that basically, if you weren't old and or weren't sick, it was more or less harmless, So we ended up, I don't have to tell you what happened. For 2.5 years, the government told us we couldn't do anything. And the real crime of this is that it was plainly obvious also in the early data that children, or that is people under 20, were completely unaffected by this. And that's still true to this day. Virtually nobody under 20 died of COVID. I'm talking statistically. I know people did, but but it was like 0.00001% of the population. It was nothing. So it was a disease of the immune system, and the weaker your immune system, the more likely it was that it would kill you. And that's exactly what happened. And there should have been like a reverse lockdown, in the sense that if you were over 65, they should have told people that you can't leave the house. Or in restaurants, if you're over 65, you can't come in. Something like that, And I just turned 65, or I was just about to. But I still even realized, I was like, well, you got to draw a line somewhere. And the lines for COVID have been drawn at either 65 or 70, and that's never really been resolved on where that changeover is. But at any rate, no. So I'm bringing this up is because, our government, you want to think the government doesn't lie to you. So now we're going to talk to Shepard on Monday, and I've seen the trailer for the movie, and I've done some reading about him. He's written 3 books, all 3 of them about Watergate, and this was like in the 1970s. It was 50 years ago tomorrow. This was 1974. And he contends that the government was lying the entire time about this, So, at what point do you not trust the government anymore? This is the part, and so when you get back to David Strom, so you got a shooter on the roof that nobody sees, or people just ignore. At what point do you believe the government that they're actually trying to do something about this? Trust in the government is getting to an all-time low. And also, you have the Russian collusion story. Donald Trump just basically got figuratively raped during his first term. They did everything possible to stop this guy. It's unbelievable. And he still did a pretty good job. Well, anyway, that's my story. So we'll be talking to Martin Willis here in a few minutes. Let me change the subject a little bit. By the way, I don't think I did this. You can call in. See this thing at the bottom, ticker at the bottom there? There's 3 ways to call into the show. You want to call in Dr. Martin? We're live. You can do that. You can call in with your webcam. Oh, we have a call. Hi, who's this?
This is Brother Mike from Singapore. How are you?
Hello, Mike. How you doing? Nice to talk to you. I'm good. Thanks. Yourself?
Nice talking to you too, you show. You see, I told you that what intel I give you in your show, it comes to reality. World War III will start from Iran, which is already started long time ago, when they sent over 300 missiles and all the junk they had in their arsenal to Israel. And so now they want to send 1,000 missiles, but not only from Iran. They want to send from Hezbollah. They want to send from Hamas. They want to send it from Iraqi.
Yeah.
That are with them. So from anywhere Iran has its fingers, we see problems. Neither they can solve their own economic problems, or people in Iran, sometimes they don't, most of people don't have ability to buy anything in supermarkets. Just they go to supermarkets just for walk. That's all.
Yeah.
Because the prices are so high that is luxury now in Iran.
Mike, I don't know if you've listened to the shows, and when you called in a couple of weeks ago, I've been referencing you a lot. I don't know if you've listened there and heard that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I was listening. Always your show is number
one.
Oh,
thank you. Thank you very much.
It is. And I know you reference it. And so right now, the conditions are very, very troubling because, first of all, that the chief of the Hamas was dead in Iran, when he went to see inauguration of, I don't call it president of Iran, but as a politically right, and at this time he is president of Ayatollahs.
Yeah.
Then, after they came and he had to go to his a special location they have for him. And then, it's very strange because they say that 6 months ago, before this, they put the bomb inside that location. And then they said it was an Israeli strike on that incident.
Hey, Mike, how long did they say the bomb was there before it went off? Was it months?
No. It was like when he was over there, maybe less than few hours.
Oh, really? Okay. All right. I thought I heard they put it in there well ahead of time, but that makes what you're saying makes more sense. So.
No, it was. It was. These people are very pretty much. It's a super police state. In Iran, unfortunately. But the question is, if they put that before, how they know that they're going to bring him in, say, 6 months period, and they say that it was activated by the telephone number or etc. And
yeah,
boom, that happened.
Well, the thing that you said in the past, the reason I was so interested in this, is because you said, I think you called in because I was talking about the fact that Blinken, the Biden administration has said they're 2-3 weeks away from a nuclear bomb, and I said that's bullshit. If they think that, then they already have one. And then you called in and said yes, they not only do they already have one, but they'll have 100 by October. And I totally believe you. And then the question is, and the things I brought up, like I had Jonathan Tobin from the Jewish News Syndicate on here, and we were talking about this. About I can't imagine if they have a nuclear bomb, I can't imagine them not using it at this point.
Yeah, the reason is because they want to have enough of that. So when it comes to that point, so they, it's not just send one or two or three. Islamic Republic of Iran is dangerous to hold the world, and if world cannot see that yet, I'm very sorry for Kamala. I'm very sorry for Joe Biden or any of the leaders in NATO. And we have to support Israel no matter what. But the question is that we have to have, I told you from July, you remember July 13th, which it happened, the surprise?
Yeah.
July 13th surprise happened. I told you we will have July. All the months of July would be surprises. All the August would be surprises. Every day we see here, there, etc. And then September surprises, not only one, all month, and October surprise, and of course November surprise. Yes, final events will be taking place. But the question is, I don't understand. Joe Biden has, both houses approved HR 559. That means we are going. They already has approved for attacking forces of the Islamic Republic, and they are going to get, that, but they don't apply it. I mean, there were 3 Americans died last time. I mean, that's act of war. I mean, this terrorist regime of Iran must go, and there is no way we can wait and deal with this regime. This regime is a shaitanic regime, and we must make sure that they are gone from the face of the planet.
Yeah. Michael?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I got 2 things here. First of all, we have kind of a bad connection. I'm having a little hard time hearing you. But secondly, my guest has already dropped by, so I'm going to let you go right now, if you don't mind. I really appreciate you calling in, though. And matter of fact, if you have any questions for Barton Willis, please call back. Okay? But like you noticed, I've been talking about you quite a lot.
Is that good right now?
Say again?
Is my connection good right now?
No, it's not terrible, but I'm having a little hard time hearing you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But like I said, my guest for tonight is here now anyway, so I'm going to let you go. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for calling. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That's Michael from Singapore. He's an Iranian journalist. Martin Willis is here. I have 12 minutes of bumper music that will keep you amused. Martin Willis, hello.
Hey there, how you doing?
Good.
Nice
How
to
are
meet
you
you, Jim.
doing?
Great.
You
Great.
look good.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Where are
Yeah.
you?
I'm in the state of New Hampshire, Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
That's
It's a
fantastic.
little port town, historical port town,
Yeah.
right on the coast.
I've never been there, but I've seen the pictures. It's very pretty.
Yeah, it's a nice area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it great that we can do this from anywhere?
I know, you think about it, I mean, I just heard your last caller was from Singapore.
That's right.
I mean, just think, 20 years ago, this wasn't happening.
No, I
know?
know. I know. 30 years ago, I couldn't move away for a radio job because my wife owns a huge business. So I know it's like that was 30 years ago, and now, and anything goes. Okay,
Right.
so
Yeah.
I have a bunch of questions for you. First of all, you host the podcast UFO podcast. That's why you're here. Did I
Yep.
get this right? Have you been doing this since
That's correct. Yes.
Holy shit. Nobody even knew what a podcast was in 2011.
Well, I started another one, an antique one that's still going today. I just did one, on antiques and art. That's what my real job is, and I started that in 2009. And that was so difficult to put together. It took weeks with people that build podcast sites. It was so difficult. Of course, YouTube hadn't been invented yet or anything
Right,
like that, but
right.
it was really, really hard to uh, get the whole feed going so people could listen to it on Apple Podcasts. I knew someone on a radio that had a radio show, and he went to a podcast, and I said, well, if he can do it, then there must be a way to do it. And but it was really hard. Now it's like very simple and
Yeah, it's
tutorial.
almost too easy now, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
You know?
there's hundreds, thousands and thousands of, podcasts out there now. And actually in the UFO world, I mean, I was one of, I don't know, maybe a dozen or so podcasts that was maybe even less than that at the time. Yeah, I'm going to say at that time, there was ones that were sustainable were probably less than 10
Uh-huh.
altogether. And one was called Das Podcast UFO in Germany. So there was some confusion there. I don't think they're any longer, but still, at that time, and now there's hundreds of them. And then
Yeah,
there's a lot of people that have been doing other shows, and they say, "Wow, this is a hot topic. I'm going to switch over to that." And
yeah.
so, I've noticed my not my audio listenership has not gone down, but my video watches or views are down, compared to just even a year ago.
Do you think that's
'Cause there's so
because,
much to choose from.
there also seems to be some evidence coming out, I don't know if this is counterintuitive, but about the fact that now people have kind of decided they'd rather just listen than watch. Are you familiar with any of this? Do you believe it?
You mean that instead of doing something about it, they just would rather watch? Is that what you're
No, no,
saying?
no, no. No, no, they'd rather listen audio only than watch the video feed.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, people are like busy lives or work. I mean, I have a lot of people that tell me they just have it playing in the background, while they're working or they're commuting. And, I mean, and during COVID, that was a time when, a lot of people really told me, oh, please, can you do more shows? you know,
yeah.
like they really looked forward to it. They needed the distraction.
So have you done
Uh,
what, did I get this right? Have you done 620 or something, so
uh,
this far?
yeah, 620. I've done a lot more shows than that, but that's for just that one particular show. You
Uh-huh.
know, yeah, I've done, 200 antique ones, I mean, and then I had other podcasts going, and I was on a regular show for a while, someone else's show, uh, Open Minds, with Alejandro Rojas for a
Yeah,
few
right.
years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you, so but anyway, I still love it. It's a great puzzle, and it's really interesting to me still.
So I'll just ask this straight out. I have a bunch of questions, but just first off, tell me something I probably don't know.
I
You
don't know
talk
how
to a
much
lot of people. I talk to a lot of
I don't
people.
know how much you know about the topic. So I don't. You mean tell everybody out there what? I don't have any. I don't know where the aliens are.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
No,
All right.
but I mean, I mean, it's been quite a since 2017. There's been a lot of change since the
Yeah.
the Pentagon's admitted they, were looking into this, and all that. There's been scientists, taking a serious look now, and they never did before. So lots has changed. I feel like there's forward motion. And last year, I was at the hearing on July 26, 2023, in Washington D.C. I was one of the 30 people that got into the room and sat down. My producer Donna, who's watching the show now, she and I both were the last few people, along with Chris Lito, who's a pilot that does a show. He also he was the very last person in the door.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really interesting. That whole situation with the whistleblowers, or whatever you want to call them, David Fravor, uh, Graves. I'm trying to think of his first name. Ryan Graves, David Fravor, and Grush was all there. David Grush. So, and so that was really. I thought it was very well done, the hearing. It was
Mhm.
bipartisan. You'd see AOC and Matt Gaetz both, getting along and talking, asking really good questions. So it was a good thing. It was a highlight, actually. It was a really interesting thing. 1,000 people showed up for those 30 seats. So
Yeah,
I'm really lucky that I got in.
yeah. So I don't know about you. I don't have any direct connection to the Pentagon per se, but I have a lot of people on the show on a regular basis who are very connected to the Pentagon. Jazz Shaw, who writes for Salem Media, he deals with people over there all the time. And the
Hmm.
one of the things that seems to have come out from our discussions and me talking to other people is that there seems to be a huge struggle in the Pentagon on whether to make this stuff public or not. Have you noticed this or?
Well, I think it's always going to be a struggle. And, I have my theory on that if you'd like to hear it.
I absolutely, and I want to qualify this too. This show is entirely about speculation.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
advertise
Yeah.
it that way. So you talk about anything you want. So I
Yeah.
want to hear what you think.
Well, I think, and I've said this a number of times in my show. So if someone has listened to that, I'm sorry you have to hear it again. But I really think that the government has more knowledge, or parts of the government. It's very compartmentalized. And I just recently talked to an NSA and an FBI about that. But so it's very compartmentalized. But I truly think that if any part of the government knows, well, I do believe they know more than we know. And I also believe that they do not know the whole picture. That's the thing. And
Uh-huh.
because they do not know the whole picture, how can they say they can save us from, whatever it is in our skies? So that's why I don't think it's going to be an easy disclosure or full disclosure, because I don't think that they can tell us exactly what's going on and whether they can protect us or not. That's if there's a protecting issue that needs to be, if they need to protect
Yeah,
us, I don't even know if they would know how to protect us.
right. No, I had a gentleman on here a couple weeks ago named Ashton Forbes, and he's been pushing this. I don't know if you know who he is. He
I've
has
heard the name. Yeah.
he has a theory about Malaysia Flight 370.
Oh,
And
yes, that's where I heard his name.
right,
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
theory is that the US military teleported it in midair to another location with three plasma drones. I mean, this is if based on our current science, this is completely fantastic. It's like it's basically unbelievable. But the thing is, he has a lot of evidence, and then the question is, I'm getting to what Richard Dolan has said, and I think I personally agree with. I think Richard's on here something here about. He says that basically there's several hundred or several thousand people in the U.S. military who are living about 100 years in the future from the rest of us because of the technology they have at their disposal. Do you think there's anything to that at all?
Uh, are you saying that because they have this knowledge, they're living that far in the future, or you're
Yeah.
saying they're actually in the future?
No, they're actually no. I'm saying that no, because they have this knowledge. That right? No, they're not
I
living
think
in the
that,
future.
I don't know about 100 years, but I would say that, I mean, it's been known for a long time that, things are developed long before we know about them, and so I don't know what they've developed. Maybe anti-gravity, that would be amazing. But it seems like if they had that technology, there's all these wars going on. It just seems like it would be used, or
Yeah.
somehow there would be a good use for it. Maybe I just don't know enough about it. It's just, again, speculation. But
Right.
I do believe that it's very possible that there's that, I've heard things thrown out there like 25 or 30 years, in the future, like we have no idea what they have.
Yeah.
And there's that quote, trying to think who it was from, at Skunk Works, that years ago, what was his name? Bush, not Bush. I can't think of his name right now. But anyway, he said we have the technology then, way back then, to fly ET home.
Yeah.
You
It
know,
was the director. The director, he passed away, and I can't remember his
yeah,
name. Yeah.
like Lloyd, or no, I can't. Anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I think that's very possible. But I know about the Malaysian flight. I know that guy's series. I've looked into a little bit, and I know that he really is harsh on anyone that criticizes his theories. He does not like to be criticized on his
Well,
ideas.
I had a good conversation with him, so
Yep.
that's all I can tell you. And I have to say, he did kind of. I mean, he does seem to have a lot of objective evidence. But even he admits. I mean, it's like, to believe that, it's unbelievable. One thing we did talk about, which is interesting, is him and I talked about the timeline. You're talking about of discoveries covertly. Like, for example, I have heard, and he heard the same thing, that the U.S. military cracked gravity in 1958. And also, I'd heard that by 80 or 81, we were flying large black triangles all over the place. But my problem with that theory is we didn't have a lot of computing power in 1981, and I don't think there's any way you could fly a spacecraft like that. Like, Forbes' thing is, he says the reason they could do this teleportation is because of quantum computing. And I kind of believe that you would need that sort of computing power to figure that sort of crap out. And that's very recent, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the quantum computers, from what I understand, are just so powerful, or can be so powerful, that they can figure out something in a matter of minutes, and a supercomputer would take millions of years
Yeah,
to figure
right.
out. That's how
That's right.
powerful they are.
That's
Yeah.
right. I don't know if you could fly an anti-gravity spacecraft without that. I really don't. It's like,
Yeah, and if you're kind of insinuating that what people have been seeing since the 80s, the big triangles like Phoenix Lights and a number of other ones, they don't always seem to fit um, that that whole situation. And let me just go back. Um, you know, uh, if you talk to someone like Dave Marler, who's really looked into the triangle UFOs, there's 100-year-old sighting of a black triangle.
mhm.
So, and I mean, I had a listener that years ago in the 60s had a huge triangle in Australia go over her, and actually pushed her and her grandmother onto the ground. They were in the garden, pushed them down on the ground when it came over them.
Oh, that's
So,
interesting.
yeah.
I have to
So I
tell
think
you, I
you know
saw one around 2006, low and slow, got a big, huge, and I cannot, I will tell you that my gut reaction looking at this thing flying over straight over my head is, I thought, that's one of ours. And I don't know why I thought that. I really don't, you know, I
Well,
have
it could
no idea.
very well be. It could very well be in 2006. I just don't, I don't buy that they go way back to,
Uh-huh.
when, people are saying 50 years ago, whatever you don't hear about them like back then that much. And it seems like there's a lot more of them now in the last, 10 years than you ever heard about before. But like, in the Belgium triangle flap in the 90s, I don't know, there was a lot of them seen there in that particular area, and that is another strange thing. Things are seen in like one area a lot of times, and then they're gone,
Yeah.
no more.
Yeah.
So it's a big puzzle.
So let me run another idea by you. All the stuff that the Nimitz and the Roosevelt, saw years ago, all with these Tic Tac vehicles. Um, I've been telling people that, of course, this is entirely my speculation. Once again, that actually maybe most of them, and maybe even possibly almost all of them, are actually ours, but they're based on technology we've recovered from crashed ET spacecraft. Do you think there's anything to that?
I mean, it's a possibility. I mean, that is the only thing is, I talked to Kevin Day, who was on. He was a radar operator
Yeah,
recently,
right.
not that long ago, and I talked to him just about that situation. And because I was doing this UAP Crossfire with a panel I was on every week
Hmm.
for a while, and the three other people, the military people, veterans, and they all, especially one of them who's now a helicopter pilot, is certain that there are technology. I mean, he just doesn't even, and then I said, "You mean tested, without letting them know?" So I told that to Kevin Day, and he got really upset. He said, if they were testing us, I would like to know about that because I'm going to sue the government if they were
Oh,
testing
yeah.
without telling us.
I mean, if they were testing that stuff in front of those the Navy people, that's a clear. If it's not a breach of protocol, it's at least it's illegal. If not anything else. I mean, yeah, we just don't
Especially
do
because
that.
it endangered, it could have
Right.
endangered, safety.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, I'm thinking my twisted logic is that, well, maybe you taste it in that situation because no one would expect you to do it. But you're right. You're still putting people in danger. I don't know.
yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if that's our own technology. I don't know. I mean, David Fravor, for him to say that he just thinks it was, nothing from this world, basically his words.
Right.
And but again, someday we will have that technology. Maybe that was our technology, but I kind of doubt it. I really
don't think
kind of
I personally don't think there's any way evolutionary in any sort of evolutionary thing. That's a come it's either if it is our technology, we got it from somewhere else. That's my thing. I don't
That's
think.
right. Because
Yeah,
you don't have like a Ferrari the day after you invent a wheel.
that's
You know,
correct. That's right. You
yeah,
don't. You don't.
there's a way it builds up to whatever it is.
I was
So
going through
it'd be a
the
big jump.
archive. I was
Mhm.
going through the archives of your show. You had Robert Schroeder on recently, and he
Yeah.
deals. So I actually bought his book based on your podcast, but
Oh, wow. He'll
it's
like
like
to hear that.
it's 15 years old,
Right.
or
Yeah.
13, 2011. A
Yeah.
lot's happened since then. Do you want to talk about like some of his theories? He deals mostly with what he calls UFO propulsion, right?
Yes, and, I have to tell you, he lost me fairly quickly. He's a very sciencey guy, but he got into all these mathematical equations on how it's possible for there to be basically a a warping of space-time. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's he goes right into it about, the gravity and the weak gravity, the strong force of gravity, and all these different things. But he has a theory, and Mark D'Antonio, who is a friend also, has built off of his theory on exactly how these things could be traveling space. Because if you talk to anyone in astronomy, they're going to say, oh, the vast differences are, it's just so far they can't get here from there.
Yeah,
And
right.
a good example of this, I had an astrophysicist explain to me that if the sun was in, listen, I want to get this right, if the sun was in Washington D.C. and it would be the size of a grapefruit, the Earth would be the size of a ball on a ballpoint pen, little tiny thing. The nearest star would be in San Francisco. That's to give you an idea of the vast distance
Uh-huh.
these things would have to travel. So there has to be, and I've had the argument with skeptics that maybe they figured something out in physics that we haven't found yet, or maybe there's something, and that's why I believe people like Bob's theory, Schroeder's theory, is very possible that they have figured out something in some way to make it like it's a piece of cake, and we just can't even imagine it because we couldn't even have that amount of energy to get to the nearest star.
Oh, right. As a matter of fact, no, I can never pronounce this guy's name. Miguel was an Abercrombie. He was the Mexican physicist who originally came up with this warp drive thing. That was his contention. Okay, theoretically, we can figure out how to do this, but on a practical basis, well, I think he estimated that a small two-seater spacecraft, you would need more electricity than is generated on Earth to actually fly the damn thing. I think that's what he said. You
Yeah.
know, so
Oh,
even
yeah.
though people have refined this theory, but still,
Yeah, I mean, right now we're using, liquid fuel. I mean, or whatever we're using the fuel and to do that, we'd have to have like the planet-sized fuel to get to there.
yeah,
It just wouldn't. It
it
can't be
won't
done.
work at all.
So,
No, it
yeah,
won't work. No,
yeah,
humans, we're great at taking really primitive shit and perfecting it. I mean, you ever think about this? Like we've been driving these internal combustion cars for 120 years. Now you'd be hard pressed to say that there's an engine in it. I mean, it makes almost no noise. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
My
Yep.
thing, I'm a performing musician, so my thing is like vinyl records, long playing LP records.
Yep.
Well, you're dragging a diamond across a piece of plastic, and it actually sounds pretty good.
Vibration. It's all
I
about
know
vibration.
it works.
Yeah.
It works. It's
Great.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, then another person you had on your show was a Christian. Oh, Jesus, hold on. I wrote this down. I actually write stuff down, Martin. Isn't it amazing? Christian Lambright, or was he your guest or not?
Oh, Christian and I have been friends for a long time, and he has been a guest many times on the show. Yes, and I met him, and when I was out in Texas a few weeks ago at the MUFON symposium out there, and Chris came up from where he lives, and we hung out together, had a great time. He's a very interesting guy, very well respected. His research is great.
And he wrote a book about Paul Benowitz. Is that right?
That's right. Paul Benowitz, and also about the possibility of propulsion as well.
Uh-huh.
Mirabeau, I think, was the physicist's name that had an idea of the beam ahead. And Ray Stanford, an old time researcher, had filmed something that looked like it had a beam ahead of it as it was moving. So
Yeah.
there's a whole nother theory there too.
In your show notes, you said that Stanford, or that video's almost legendary because he's hardly ever shown it.
Yeah, Ray's very, very cautious.
Do you know him yourself?
Yes, I went to his house. I spent a couple of days there. He's got a lot of films, a
Have
lot
you
of
seen that video?
I have, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But he's very, I mean, he's so cautious that he wanted to make sure my cell phone or any other camera was not with me, and
Yeah.
he's just really, really nervous. And the reason being, according to him, was that people have really come after him, and try to belittle him, and say that he's just all his things are false or whatever, and he doesn't want that to happen. He's pushing, I think he's like 85 or 86 by now.
Uh-huh.
And he does have something in place, and someone I know that say they're actually going to get these things out there after he's passed.
I assume you found that. This is not a business for the faint of heart, don't you think?
Right. Yes. Yep. No, you're right. You have to have, there's people have their own opinions and want to let you know them all the time.
So did Stanford's, I mean, you don't have to tell me what's on it, but did Stanford's video blow you away?
Yes, he had something more than that. He had a picture that I really, really wanted to get out there because it was so amazing.
Huh.
And then I found out later that there was some type of anomaly according to him. So it's controversial in my mind. But what I thought I saw with my own eyes was something truly amazing. But
That's
I don't
incredible.
think it'll ever see the light of day, though, because something was going on with it. According to Ray, that when it was developed, he found the original and it wasn't on the original. He thinks it was an anomaly during developing.
Okay.
So that was the one that blew me away the most, was that particular picture. Although he showed me many videos of, he had this thing where he just always had his camera with him and was always ready. And I swear he has seen over 50 UFOs.
Well, have you noticed this, Martin? It does seem like some people, it's not so much that certain people are attracted to the UFOs. It's like the UFOs are attracted to them.
I have talked to people that claim that, more or less. He was actually on a flight. His the most amazing video, as we were talking about earlier, he was on a flight and he just had this feeling and put his camera right out the window and showed right up.
I'll be damned.
Yeah.
So in Lambridge's book, he also
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Writing about Paul Benowitz, and this is a relatively famous story in UFO lore. But he talks about Richard Doty. So I've never known what to make of this guy. Do you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. You see Richard Doty everywhere now, and he's seeing the aliens here, and he has seen them, and he's in different films. I don't I don't know what to think of him. I think it's basically BS if it comes from him myself.
Uh-huh.
And I had him agree to be on my show, and I told him, I said, I want to be able to talk about anything. And I mean anything, and ask you questions about anything. And I wanted to go right in there about Paul Benowitz. That whole situation was he was basically treated wrong. Of course, he falls back on he was doing what the government was telling him to do. So
Yeah.
he had to do it, that type of thing. But he was kind of demoted after that. I don't know what happened with that whole situation.
Oh,
But
really? I
yeah,
didn't
there
know
was
that.
there was something happened. If you look into it, you can find where he went, during those times and after. But so I really don't have much faith in what Richard Doty has to say. Anyway, he backed out as soon as I asked. He said, "Sure, you can ask me anything you want." And then he just, I guess the term is ghosted me. I never
Huh.
could never get a reply out of him again.
They're hanging
And
out
then he
with the
was on
kids
other
then.
people's shows, and he was saying he was too busy, but he was on other people's shows, so he wasn't too busy.
I've never heard anybody ask him point blank if there's stuff he still can't talk about.
Mm.
I mean, that's the first question I'd ask him is like, is there stuff that you can't by security oath or anything can't talk about?
Well, I'm
But
sure he's gonna say yes, I mean, I've asked that from, people like Lou Elizondo and people like that. I've asked those type of people, and, they always say yes. I
yeah,
mean, and it's whether it's true or not, they're gonna say yes. They can't
right.
talk about it.
I want to bring up another person who I've always kind of been somewhat dubious about, and something you said 5 minutes ago reminded me of this, and that's Whitley Strieber. So now I'm old enough to remember this. I actually saw this in real time, live when Strieber came on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson when he wrote Communion. It's like 1987, I think it is.
Hmm.
I'm that old. I'm older than you. So he comes out and sits down, and Carson, of course, was an amateur astronomer and actually a fairly rational guy. He says to Strieber, says, "All right, I read your book." He said, "I just want to get this out for right away before we even start here." He said, "I don't believe your story. I think you made this up. But that said, go ahead." And from that point on, it was a very, very straight ahead interview. I mean, he asked questions, but I just thought it was kind of funny how it was a great way to start that if you were a skeptic, and he obviously was. So I don't quite understand what's going on with Strieber, because some of the stuff he's written doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, even within the universities we're talking about, it just doesn't.
Well, I've had thoughts and theories about that book in particular.
Yeah,
I
I want
mean,
to hear them. I want to hear your thoughts and theories.
I thought, well, I thought maybe he first wrote that book as a fiction and the idea of a fiction.
Uh-huh.
And then when it started to like really, really sell, I think he went all in. Maybe I'm totally wrong on that. But I mean, that is a thought because, he claims that it made him go bankrupt and all that, but that book sold millions,
I know.
I
I
mean,
had a very hard time imagining he came out of that financially bad. I really
right.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure what to think. I've had him on the show a couple of times. One time I interviewed him, and one time I had a guest host interview him. He's cordial. He's very, intelligent, and he's well spoken, and he's an author.
Yeah.
So
Right.
and he's written a lot of really good fiction, and I mean, but there are so many people that I've talked to that say, "Wow, that looks like the alien I saw." I mean, you think about the Allagash incident. I don't know if you are familiar with that.
I'm sorry, the
It's
what?
called the Allagash incident. It happened in, I think, 1978 in the state of Maine. These people were basically on a canoe trip in the middle of nowhere in Maine, and they built a bonfire, went out in their canoe, and they built the fire. So they wanted to fish at night. They built the fire really high so they'd be able to fish for a long time and then be able to find their campsite because they were in a very remote lake, no camps or nothing there. So they're out, and this UFO comes over them, and Charlie flashed the light up, and they saw this beam of light come down, and they basically go back to the shore, and they look, and the campfire's down to nothing. How did that happen? We just got back, and then it took like 10 years for them to start remembering everything.
Yeah.
And how one of them, Jim, was in a accident in a construction site, injured himself really bad, and he was recovering for months in a hospital, and he was getting books to read, and then all of a sudden the communion book by Whitley Strieber's like on a table, and he looks at it, and then he just had total recall. He said that being was what looked just like the ones up in the craft. They were basically, they all had recall after that. They went through regression and all that. Ray Fowler, a great researcher, got involved, but they basically were drawn up into the craft according to their memories, and they were all examined, and and they all changed in some type of way, which was really quite amazing. They were all artists. They were going to art school, and one became a mathematician. He couldn't even, he was not good at math before. He became a mathematician, even worked on some things at NASA. That's how far advanced he was. And but they all have really amazing stories. And the most maybe go off a little topic here, but it's really quite stunning, is that Jack, who's now in hospice, said he had another encounter later, and the beings told him, like, showed like where they were from in the stars or whatever, basically. And it gets really weird, and he says it's really weird for me to say this, but that being also conveyed to him that the highest intelligence in the not in the universe, but in the galaxy is, and he kind of pointed to the star system, and they achieve the highest intelligence from unconditional love. I mean, what a thing to say. And he felt like all of a sudden he just felt this feeling that brought tears to his eyes, and he says he's never felt that way before, and then the encounter was gone. So really bizarre, I know.
No.
But,
have you noticed this? I mean, I don't know how much you talk about stuff other than UFOs on your show, but I'm starting to realize, or I don't know if it's realization is the right word. I read a lot about what's called, what most people call the paranormal, like especially near-death experiences and stuff like that. And there does seem to be some realm where all this stuff seems to like overlap. I don't. Have you noticed this?
Oh yeah, there was a friend of mine who passed away a little while ago named Paul Eno, a great guy. He did a radio show in the Providence, Rhode Island area, and he had a theory. His theory was that they were all the same thing, whether it was Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts. He thought it was all interdimensional, and that all answered everything. And he had a whole theory, the way he would talk about it. And was some validity to this. And he witnessed a poltergeist situation that was really quite amazing, because there were several police officers and firemen there at the same time, and they all watched this 200-pound refrigerator lift up and fly across the room. And this was in Connecticut. So his theory is that somehow it's all related to, or he thought, that they were all related.
You've been doing this way longer than I have, and here's something an idea I'm going to throw out at you, because you would probably know way more than I would. I had a guy on my show named Steve McIntosh. He's a philosopher. So we talked about philosophy mostly. And at the end of the show, I just happened to mention, do you buy the UFO stuff? And he said, well, he says, based on what happened in 2017 and the evidence that's come forward, he said, I think it's irrefutable at this point. We're being visited by people from other realms. And I said, okay. And then I said, "Well, so what about Bigfoot?" And he said, "Oh no, I don't buy Bigfoot at all." And he also said he didn't buy alien abduction and he didn't buy crashed spacecraft. He said, but he said we have proof now that we're being visited by other places. Although like most people, he didn't want to say physical places. But my point is that it occurred to me 10 years ago. I have a lot of Bigfoot people on the show too. 10 years ago, people would say, well, I could buy Bigfoot. It's an undiscovered primate, but the UFO thing, absolutely not. Now it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I know people who buy the UFO thing don't have any problem with it, but Bigfoot, no, show me a body.
Well, I know it's something. Now, I know someone. I'm close to someone that has had a brother who, back in the 70s, said he was coming through a path. I don't know, on bicycles. I can't remember. And with his friend, and there was a UFO, landed UFO, and his friend just was froze, like he was, he wasn't moving or anything. But they took him, and there are he described them as two large apes. And Bigfoot, it sounds like.
Uh-huh.
And she thinks he might have said that they had an odor that you always hear,
Yeah.
and they told him that they've been taking him all along, and they can find him whenever they want. Now, he wasn't into anything about, there wasn't any talk about any of this in the 70s, this type of situation.
Right.
And he was absolutely horrified. Did I lose you?
No, I'm still here, but
Okay.
it looks like you got a light that went off.
Okay. There it is.
Yeah, there you
Okay.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he has absolutely no idea, and she was trying to help him, her brother. She was trying to help him, and she didn't know what to do. And she actually got a hold of Simons, I think, who was involved in Betty and Barney Hill, the hypnotist.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
she
Benjamin
called.
Simon, right. Yeah.
Yeah. She actually called him, and he actually called her back. And he said, I think your brother's suffering from a delusion, that type of situation, needs help, that type of thing. But anyway, it's really, and by the way, he mentioned to her that he didn't really think that Betty and Barney Hills really, he thinks that they believed it happened, but he didn't believe
Right.
that it happened to them.
I've had Kathleen Martin, the
She's
niece.
wonderful. I like Kathleen.
She's on the show, and she said the same thing, that he couldn't buy it, even though he believed that they believed it, right?
Yeah.
But the thing about that is, though, he interviewed them separately, all those, and their stories basically matched up. So I don't know how the hell I think it's just too, it was, especially at that time, was too fantastic for anybody who was like a rational professional to actually buy. But then you got John Mack, which is an incredible story. He goes out, he decides, I'm going to find out what's wrong with these people. There's something obviously wrong with them. And he interviews a couple hundred of them, and then he concludes, no, this is actually happening, and he almost loses his job over it. I mean, it's really pretty amazing. I had, speaking of the Bigfoot thing, I had Stan Gordon on this show too. And
I like Stan. He's great.
He's a great guy. But
you only had him on the phone, though. He doesn't do video.
That's right. Exactly. That's right. He wouldn't do video. That's correct. So, but he won't speculate at all. He's in his mind, he's a pure journalist. I can't get him to speculate. But the one thing he did say very emphatically, after all these Bigfoot cases he's investigated, he said, there's something going on here other than just an undiscovered primate. He said, there's some paranormal aspect to this that I can't figure out. And he's talked to enough people, so I figure he might know. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I was on a flight, and it was a very small plane. I was like a little puddle jumper from Logan up to Rockland, Maine, where I was living at the time. And I got to talking to the girl next to me, and eventually, it doesn't always come up, but every once in a while I'll tell someone I do a show on UFOs and see where it lands. And she said, well, that's interesting. She says, my best friend has Bigfoot visiting her all the time. So I said, oh, really? Where? And so she's in Eastern Oregon. So I said, hey, is there any chance I was doing a show with someone out west in the Washington State area that claims that there's a connection between UFOs and Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And that's actually the name, I believe that's the name of my blog this week. I have someone that writes blogs for me. Basically that's kind of what the blog is about. But so I said, can I call you? Can I bring you into the show when I have these people on? And so I did. And her story was absolutely wild. And so like they were hanging out and she was feeding them,
Uh-huh.
like they started first, they were like in her garbage and then she just started feeding them. And this is all according to her. It was a fantastic story. So, and she saw like one up in a tree at one time, which I've never heard anyone say before. But anyway, so I asked her the simple question that anyone with a brain, I think, would ask, and that is, where's the pictures? Where's the film? Where's the pictures? And she said to me, oh, we have an agreement that I can't take pictures of them. And to me, that's like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, but is she saying that she's telepathically communicating with them?
I suppose,
Yeah.
or
Well,
at least somehow about that.
that's the problem with the whole thing. There's too many people, and Stan talked about this too. There's too many people have either said they've seen Bigfoot disappear right before their eyes, or that they've telepathically communicated with them. Well, I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a regular primate. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that nobody's ever found a skeleton or a dead one, or I mean, any of that, I don't know either. And I have also heard people talk about them disappearing. And there's a story, a pretty credible witness that claimed that an orb, like, sort of landed in her backyard. I can't remember where this was. And all of a sudden it like opened into a Bigfoot,
Yeah, I've
something that
heard
looked
that
like a
too.
Bigfoot. Yeah.
I know.
So I don't know. I haven't really looked into Bigfoot. It's just the rabbit hole I haven't really gone down too much.
Yeah, I
I
got a
don't know what
guy,
to think of it.
a regular participant on the show. He's not. I wouldn't even call him regular guest. He's kind of like he comes on all the time. He's a Bigfoot researcher for the Bigfoot Field Research Organization, and he didn't. They signed him up or asked him to work for them because he was a police investigator, and they needed somebody who had some bona fides, And he didn't buy the thing at all until he said, "I'm out in the Ozarks in the middle of the forest. It's pitch black. It's the middle of the night," and he said he watched this family of Bigfoot, Mama, Papa, and little baby Bigfoot, through an infrared camera for an hour. And he said, after that, I believed it.
Did he film it?
I don't, I don't, I assume not. He's never mentioned the film.
I mean, that just seems like that would be gold. I mean, you look at the Patterson,
Yeah.
what's it called? The film there, which they've never been able to debunk.
Yeah.
They still can't debunk that because of the movements and the anatomy of a human doesn't match up with the knee bendings and where they are and all that.
Well,
so yeah.
That leads to another question. You've been doing this for a long time. I put a lot of weight in an enormous number of human witnesses. I mean, there's several hundred people every year that see Bigfoot. And the amazing thing about that is that you ever notice no one ever sees Bigfoot, actually goes out looking for Bigfoot. It's the people who would go out in the woods to have, having a picnic with their family. They're the people who see Bigfoot,
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
but you have thousands and thousands of people who have reported this. And I can't imagine at some point, I don't know what the number is, even if 95% of them are full of shit, you still have a body of evidence. That's the way I look at this.
And it's worldwide too. You hear they call them Yeti, they call them different names. So
I wasn't even just talking about the Bigfoot thing, even like the UFOs or the aliens. There's too many in my mind, there's just too many people that have reported what is more or less the same thing. Like you were talking about the gray aliens, So I mean, how many I mean, some psychologists tell you the reason that that's reported so much is because now it's part of the culture, and I suppose that could be something to that. But geez, I don't know. It's like it's such an overwhelming number of people, you know.
I talked to that. I talked to a professor of history a few weeks ago, and basically asked if he thought pop pop culture was part of the UFO enigma. And the
Uh-huh.
reason people are, and he said no, he didn't think that played any part of it, and
That's
he's
really
done a
interesting.
lot of research. Hmm.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'm under the impression most of the people in that field would disagree. I don't know if that's the assumption I'm making, but
No, I told him that. People I've talked about have tried to put it all on pop culture. In the skeptic side. Hmm.
uh-huh. So to wrap this up, what do you think is going to happen in the near future? Are we going to have any sort of grand disclosure or not?
Well, I think I've heard the term forced disclosure. I think that's the only type of disclosure that we're going to get because again, how I feel about this whole thing is that it's not going to be the government willingly because they do not. I do not believe they have the full picture, and because of that, I just don't think we're going to get it directly from the government.
Yeah.
So, but I think there could be a situation like, Phoenix Lights was pretty amazing in 1997, but something like that when there's thousands and thousands of witnesses, if it's too many and something spectacular, like all those movies are Independence Day, something like that. But I mean, if it's too spectacular to be denied, then I think then we'll just have to know more.
I could make the argument that the Phoenix Lights almost fits that description. There were so many people that saw that, and of course the thing is the films that people have, the video was actually taken, it's actually after the event. It's
Right.
actually two
Those are the
separate
flares.
events. Right.
There's supposedly only one film of it,
Yeah.
of the real, what they were seeing, and the
Right.
rest of them are the flares. And I think the flares, they're saying they already had that lined up as an exercise, but I do think it was a way to, change the narrative of that whole thing
Right.
myself.
Yeah. I
Because
agree
so
with you
many
totally.
people saw that, and they looked up, you could see through it. It had like a ripple effect and all that. I mean, but there was something structured there.
Yeah, I've only heard one interesting counter theory on that, and that is that it was the military used it as an experiment. It was a giant hologram, especially because people could see through it, So I don't know.
Mhm.
I find that's an interesting idea. I don't know, but everybody has interesting
But
ideas,
it would be hard to imagine because it was seen for such a distance
right?
over so many, I think 3 states, they said different
Yeah, that's
sightings. And
right.
Peter Davenport was getting calls, and some people were saying it was miles wide,
Yeah,
the thing.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I think in Phoenix, I don't quite understand the topography, but apparently there was two small mountain bluff-like ranges, and apparently
Mhm.
this thing just passed between them, and that
Right.
distance was 1,500 feet. That's not
Mhm.
small,
Right. Yeah.
So, and hell,
Yeah.
the governor saw him, and he was making fun of it.
That's right. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is almost the scenario you're talking about. I mean, it's almost undeniable. But I also totally agree with you. I think they did that as a distraction. The second
Yeah.
half, yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's been great talking to you,
Thank you.
Martin. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I hope
It's
you
been
come
my
back.
my pleasure.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I'll come back. Sure.
yeah. Great,
Yeah. Yeah.
great. You take care. All right.
All
I'll
right.
see you.
You too. Yeah. Yeah. Bye
Bye
now.
bye. That's Martin Willis. He's the host of Podcast UFO podcast. And yeah, he's been doing this since 2011. Oh my God. It's like, were there even computers in 2011? Yeah, there were. They were. Now I got to do this before I forget. I forgot to run the spot for our sponsor. Here it is. Here's Conch News. This is the front page of Conch News in real time. Matter of fact, I was actually looking here. It's rolled over twice since we started the show. It updates itself. Conch News is a news aggregator, and the whole thing's automated. And normally you'd think that's a bad thing, but it isn't here. So the way this works is that the servers at Conch News go out every 3 hours, and they grab the latest news stories from 75 different sources, and then they bring them back. They polish them up, take out all the crap that keeps them from being formatted, and puts them on the front page in chronological order. Newest ones at the top. Now, the really cool thing about that is that if you go to most other, matter of fact, as far as I know, this Calling News is the only news aggregator that does this. If you go to other news aggregators, they will list stories by the source. In other words, you have the top 5 stories from Breitbart, or the top 5 stories from Fox News, or that sort of thing, and so they're siloed. They're all just, it's the newest story, regardless of what source it is, that on the front page. And so, like, for example, I can tell because on Calling News in the lower left corner, there's always a little icon. That's the icon of the website or the news service they get that from. And in the top here, the top left, with the picture of the cat, that's Hot Air. I can tell. And I do this commercial every night, and the interesting thing is, I notice that Hot Air often has they're often at the top left corner, and I think that's because of the time of day we do this. So, I mean, news services, news sources, they post there. Some of the posting is automated, and so it depends on. And of course, we do the show at the same time every night. So I think that's part of that. But anyway, there's 75 different news sources involved here. That's my picture on the upper right because they're the sponsor of the show, and I appreciate it. And as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, I used to work for these people too, and it's a great product. It's fantastic. So, what was I going to say? Oh, I'll tell you what I was going to say. The pictures are from the articles themselves. The headlines are from the articles. They're not rewritten. And if you click through, you go directly to that story. You don't go to an interstitial page. You don't go to an ad. You don't go to the front page. You go right to that story. So this is as close as you can get to an old-time, physical newspaper. That's the way I look at this anyway. And so their servers, they collect this news 8 times a day, 3 times every 3 hours. And if you can go there at 10 o'clock, there's enough to keep you occupied here. Even if you want to click through to a few stories, you can spend a couple hours looking at this. You come back 5 hours later, and 80% of the stories are new, and the old ones are pushed to the bottom of the page. So this is basically a front page website. And the really cool thing, or a one-page website, excuse me. The really cool thing is it's completely free. You don't have to register. You don't have to log in. You don't have to subscribe, nothing. You just go there. It's at conk.com, conk.com, or conk.news, conk.news. Either one works. And it's at the top on the banner there on the top. You can see that. So yeah, check that out. You won't regret it. Seriously, if you're a news junkie, it's like a sexual experience. That's the way I look at it. And I use it all the time to play in the show too. I do. I want to thank you folks for watching. I want to thank Martin Willis for being on. I want to thank Mike from Singapore for calling in. He has told us some really amazing stuff, and it's all kind of panned out. So it's like I like to hear scuttle from him all the time. Tomorrow night, David Strom is going to be here, and we'll talk about Tim Walz. Now, David, we do the show in Minneapolis, where Tim Walz is from. He's the governor of Minnesota, and David also lives here in Minneapolis too. Amazingly, we've never gotten together when we're talking about it finally. So he's in Minneapolis, so he knows about our governor very, very well. And I said this last night. I think that them choosing Tim Walz as a running mate is a colossal mistake, and I'm not the only person who seems to think that either. I can understand what Kamala has said. Her quote is that it was a gut reaction, and she just clicked with this guy, and of course she clicked with him. They have almost the exact same thoughts on politics, almost exactly. And normally that's not what you want in a running mate. I don't know if anyone bothered to try to stop her or whatever. And then the other thing is the obvious alternative with Josh Shapiro, because he could have made the difference between them winning Pennsylvania and not. And if they lose Pennsylvania, they will lose the election. Whereas Minnesota, Trump had a chance to turn Minnesota, and now that Walz is the running mate, he won't. I assume they're just going to give up. I mean, Minnesota will vote for Kamala. They probably would have anyway, but it's only 10 electoral votes. It's really not. No, if they lose Pennsylvania, they will lose the election. There's no doubt about that. So, at any rate. So yeah, I'm not the only person who thought this is stupid, but David's been writing about how stupid it is too, and we're looking forward to talking to him. And so once again on Monday, Jeff Shepard will be here. His documentary Watergate Secrets comes out tomorrow on the 50th anniversary of Richard Nixon resigning. That's tomorrow. So I'm going to watch that this weekend, and you might want to try that too. I'm going to put a link up on our blog, our show blog at jimatnight.com to link to the website of for that documentary. Anyway, once again, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I kind of like doing this. Yak, 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 yak. Good night, Esperanza. Good night, Uncle Donnie. And good night to you, wherever you are. We'll see you tomorrow night.